Hey everyone, I'm David Finz, and on this episode of the Cyber Insurance Imperative, we're going to address the thorny question of what to do when you're experiencing a ransomware attack and the extortionists ask for details about your insurance coverage. This may seem like a far-fetched scenario, but it's been a reality for kidnap and ransom policies for years, and now this awkward dynamic is beginning to play out in the cyber insurance space. Just last week, it was reported by Bleeping Computer that a ransomware threat known as Hardbit has released a new version of its malware, which, as part of its attack, encourages the victims to confirm the availability of and limits afforded by their cyber insurance policy in order to facilitate a payment to the threat actors. Now, Hardbit doesn't boast its own website to share the data it exfiltrates from the victim, although the extortionists do threaten to leak their data on the dark web if they're not paid. However, the attackers go to great lengths to disable the victim's defenses and overwrite existing files with the encrypted data, which can frustrate the recovery process. Now, what I would like to focus on here, though, is their negotiating tactics. Some of the bluster is typical of ransomware gangs. They threaten the victim with only having 48 hours to pay before the ransom increases, and they warn the victim that engaging an intermediary will only serve to drive up the price. But what is somewhat unique is that instead of searching through the victim's network to find details on their coverage, they try to persuade the victim to furnish this information up front, even to some extent portraying the insurance carrier as an obstacle to their being able to recover from the event. Now, I'm not a threat consultant, and I would urge any victim of a ransomware attack, insured or not, to consult with a qualified professional for advice. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that sharing insurance details with your attackers is a bad idea. First and foremost, many policies have prohibitions against your sharing this information with third parties, absent a subpoena or discovery in a civil proceeding. So you could be jeopardizing coverage here. Second, who's to say that once the attackers know what limits are available, they won't raise their demand? You need to remember that we're dealing with criminals here. And while most ransomware gangs have a track record of decrypting files once payment is made, this particular tactic is uncharted waters. There's a right way and a wrong way to go about negotiating with them, and coughing up your policy limits has wrong written all over it. Now, I've always maintained that absent a national security concern or the threat actors being on the sanctions list maintained by the Office of Foreign Asset Controls, whether to pay the ransom is a decision best made by businesses in consultation with a qualified threat consultant, but it should always be considered a last resort. There are things that businesses can do before an incident, such as encrypting sensitive data, having robust backups, and conducting tabletop exercises that will make them more resistant to an attack and more resilient when one occurs. And even during an attack, working closely with a threat consultant and coordinating your response with law enforcement can sometimes enable a business to walk away without the payment of ransom, such as when a decryption key for their particular strain of ransomware is already known to the authorities. Regardless, sharing insurance details with cybercriminals strikes me as the equivalent of handing the keys to the safe over to a burglar. The fact is, the question being asked by the Hardbit operators is something of a red herring, because the majority of small and mid-sized businesses in this country still do not buy cyber insurance. And that's a shame, because not only are they facing an existential threat to the company's finances and reputation, but they're doing it without access to the expertise provided by the incident response vendors available to policyholders. These professionals are thoroughly vetted by the carriers, and they deal with stuff like this all day, every day. And if your business is one of those who haven't yet purchased this coverage, maybe it's time that you discover the more rewarding way to manage risk. So DM me on LinkedIn or email me at david.finz@alliant.com, and I'll send you our fact sheet going over the security controls best positioned to help you protect your organization against ransomware. Thanks for watching.